Since 2014, SESAR Deployment Manager worked successfully on coordinating the modernization of European air traffic management involving all aviation stakeholders. With the EU's financial support and the cooperation of air traffic management institutions, the aviation industry has invested close to €3 billion in 343 modernization projects. Over 150 of these are already completed, digitalizing and decarbonizing the European airspace. Almost 100 civil and military airports, airlines and air navigation service providers in over 32 European countries are involved, along with several European institutions and manufacturers. With 1/3 of the pilot common project in operation and an additional 40% deployment ongoing, SESAR Deployment Manager delivered way ahead of the foreseen deadline. These modernization projects in operation save time, fuel and trees for EU passengers and citizens and generate payback for the economy while digitalizing European skies. By 2030, 13.5 million minutes of passengers' time, the equivalent of the average flight time of 120,000 flights, will be saved. The first set of 150 completed projects will spare 280,000 tonnes of fuel by 2030, enough to power 44,000 average flights. The joint effort will also accumulate a saving of 880,000 tonnes of CO2, which compares to 1.8 million saved trees. In total, all these savings of time, fuel and CO2 from the first 150 completed projects are worth €775 million. With the support of all institutions and stakeholders involved, we are also coordinating the data link services and ADS-B implementation in Europe. We couldn't have achieved any of this without the EU's financial support, but the commitment of all SESAR deployment stakeholders remains the real engine of air traffic management modernization. This is their result and their journey. We are grateful for their unwavering ongoing support, and we promise to keep on guiding them as the modernization journey continues. The SESAR Deployment Manager function will keep joining forces to make air traffic management more effective, cost-efficient, scalable and environmentally sustainable. The route to a fully modernized, single digital European sky continues, with the need to keep all stakeholders on board. Let's keep on delivering air traffic management modernization together.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this unique virtual experience, SESAR Deployment Manager annual event, continuing the journey of ATM modernization. I am Madalina Kramer, Head of Stakeholder Relations at SESAR Deployment Manager, and I am delighted to be your host today. We are happy to see the high interest for the SESAR deployment story, joining the efforts of the ATM community to modernize ATM and make it more effective, cost-efficient, scalable, and environmentally sustainable. Seeing the still growing number of participants, it is useful to spare a few minutes providing you with some practical details to secure a smooth virtual experience for you all. The entire event will be recorded, and we will share the highlights with the ATM community in a few days through the SDM website and social channels. Soon, a dedicated communication will be sent to all participants. As you may have already noticed in the waiting room, during the day, we will launch some questions to you via our voting system. We would appreciate to have your feedback on all of them. Each poll will remain open for you for your voting for about 15 minutes, and when concluding the morning session, we will have a look at the poll results. For any question you may have during the event, either practical or content related, please provide them to us using the tool that you have on your screen. The practical ones will be answered or dealt with by our technical team, and for the content ones, this will be answered either live or tackled in writing after the event, depending on the time constraints. Today's event is split in two main sessions: a high-level morning session and a more working-related session in the afternoon. The first session is foreseen to close around 13 and will serve you some very interesting keynotes and an interactive roundtable session moderated by my colleague Maria Grazia Lapiscopia, Chief Strategy and Program Management at SESAR Deployment Manager. After the lunch break, we will meet again to attend the afternoon part that is dedicated to our implementing partners. I see now that we are over 250 live participants, so it is time to get started by inviting you to vote on our first poll that you can see displayed on your screens. And that is: SESAR Deployment Manager is delivering. Thank you all for your feedback, and you can provide this feedback live for the next 15 minutes. I'd like now to invite you listening our General Manager, Nicola Varinsko, offering to us the official opening speech of our event. Enjoy.
Thank you, Madalina. Good morning, everyone. As you might recall from the past years, we are organizing an annual event on a yearly basis to showcase to you the beating heart of SESAR Deployment Manager function, the realizations and accomplishments we gain together. Unfortunately, this year is a special one for all of us due to the existing context that prevents us from traveling freely, prevents us from driving face-to-face meetings, one of the main important aspects of our function, directly liaising with you, our implementing partners, creating that unique connections that represent the foundation of our mutual trust. Based on high mobilization and solidarity I feel throughout the aviation community, I am confident that the situation will restore fast through concerted efforts and of all players involved as soon as the circumstances would allow. Today, I am delighted to welcome you to this virtual experience entitled Continuing the Journey of ATM Modernization. Back in 2014, indeed, 6 years have passed. By the blink of an eye, SDM was created, evoking different reactions. For some being a daring experiment, for some a long-awaited decision. For us, the one involved, directly involved, a very ambitious and demanding project. Now, looking back, I may proudly say that we managed to reach the ambition and target set. We even managed to exceed them. For you not to consider this is as a lack of modesty on our side, let me start that by shortly recalling the pioneer nature of our setup. The SESAR Deployment Alliance was the first partnership mandated to execute the role of a SESAR Deployment Manager. We kicked off this huge modernization project with great ambitions, steered by the European Commission and putting the aviation industry, the ATM operational stakeholders in particular, in the driving seat. The aim was to deliver results together with all aviation stakeholders and involved institutions, all driven by the same vivid desire to improve the ATM in Europe through timely SESAR deployment. As SESAR Deployment Manager mandated to implement the pilot common project, we grew from 16 founding members of the SESAR Deployment Alliance to 100 partners, including the 19 present members of the SESAR Deployment Alliance. And from coordinating 0 to 343 deployments projects, 155 of them completed today, ensuring 775 million euro of cumulated savings by 2030 in time, fuel, and CO2, benefiting the citizens, the environment, and the economy. Our additional mandates on DLS recovery and ADSB implementation are also delivering results at an unprecedented pace. We are thankful to have for this the support of other key European sky players, namely the SESAR joint undertaking, Eurocontrol, the network manager, the European Defence Agency, the European Aviation Safety Agency, and Eurocay, all trusted partners since the beginning of this journey. The fruitful coordination that we constantly maintain with all of them has been decisive to achieve the before-mentioned results. I am proud to be able to say that today, the SESAR deployment manager function has become an essential single European sky function, thanks to your commitment and your investments. An unprecedented crisis is shaking the world, in particular aviation industry. Therefore, we considered it is our duty to support you during this difficult period, a period that is unfortunately proving to be longer and with greater consequence for the aviation sectors than initially forecasted. The path to full recovery in aviation is long and contains obstacles no one has anticipated. It is important that we can act together, build together, and aim together for a more digital, greener, and sustainable aviation environment. The team at SESAR Deployment Manager tries its utmost to keep on supporting all our implementing partners. For their unprecedented effort, I thank them. To further improve our communication on SESAR deployment and to create common pool from where you all can extract and promote your own SESAR deployment realizations, we have recently launched a new website and consolidated our deployment community into an online partner area, all to further prove that we are delivering real benefits together. In our effort to support you to the maximum extent possible, we have immediately initiated a trilogue with DG Move and INEA, expressing the needs on behalf of all impacted stakeholders in the past few months. I refer here to the adaptation of CP1 deadlines, the revised CBA, and the extension of important existing project delivery deadlines. The function and role of the SESAR Deployment Manager keeps on delivering, while the first SESAR Deployment Framework Partnership is coming to its end on 31st December 2020, at the end of next month. The upcoming second SESAR Deployment Framework Partnership to be concluded in the course of 2021 is a unique opportunity to evolve it, based on the lessons learned the past 6 years, in order to make it more efficient, whilst preserving industry's influence. Having been personally involved into it from its very beginning and leading it for the past 3 years, I am confident that the current SESAR Deployment Framework Partnership leaves a robust legacy for its successor to build on. One of the key legacies I'm particularly proud of is our consultation modus operandi. I mean, the way we include all the stakeholders beyond SDA members, beyond implementing partners, into the development and the final buying of every key document that we deliver to the European Commission. This modus operandi requires time and significant effort, but successful deployment can only happen with the buying of those required to invest. I trust this would be continued. Talking continuity, we would like to reassure you also that the SESAR Deployment Alliance will work together with European Commission and the new SESAR Deployment Framework Partnership for smooth transition, as seamless as possible for the implementing partners and providing for full continuity of the SESAR Deployment Manager function. The SESAR Deployment Manager function will keep on joining forces and building bridges between operational stakeholders and European institutions to make air traffic management become more effective, cost-efficient, scalable, and environmental sustainable. We could not achieve any of this without financial support of the EU. But the commitment of all of you as SESAR deployment implementing partners and stakeholders remains the true engine of air traffic modernization. This is your result and this is your journey. Let's keep on delivering ATM modernization together. Thank you and enjoy the event.
Thank you, Nicolas, for providing the overview of the SESAR Deployment Manager realizations over the past 6 years and reassurance on the joining efforts to ensure a smooth transition towards the new SESAR deployment partnership. Thank you. Continuing our journey this morning, may I now have your attention for our distinguished guest, Mr. Henrik Hololei, Director General at the European Commission, DG Move. Mr. Hololei, welcome, and thank you for accepting our invitation today to lead the story of the SESAR deployment ATM modernization journey. Please, Mr. Hololei, the floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to be here, and good morning to members and partners of the SESAR Deployment Manager. For me, it's really an honor to take part in the SDM annual event, and I know that it might be great to think that thanks to digital opportunities, I'm able to reach out to you. But believe me, I would have so much preferred to be here or there in person and with other persons and to talk to you at the meeting venue, feeling also at the same time the presence of people and emotions. There are just some things that cannot be replicated through digital means, and human contact is definitely one of them. Nevertheless, I'm glad that I can at least virtually reach out to the vast SESAR deployment family. This year's meeting is a very special event because it represents a landmark for what a pioneering and highly motivated partnership can achieve, especially when embarking in an unprecedented venture with many difficult challenges along the way. A landmark, but definitely not the end of the venture. SESAR deployment is part of a comprehensive ATM innovation cycle that, thanks to our combined efforts, is shaping a new vision, a new future for air transport, the digital European sky. If there is something good about the crisis, then it has made the aviation value network to work more closely together and overcome the differences that have been present for a long time. There is one common goal: restore aviation, recover from the crisis, and thrive in the future, with the aim to achieve a more sustainable, smarter, and resilient sector. And that should drive our close cooperation forward. The second characteristics, as the word cycle suggests, is continuity. Not a passive one, but rather an evolutionary continuity through which we learn from the actions and develop new thoughts to improve them, to make them more effective. All phases of the cycle are fundamental and equally important. However, let us face it, the deployment phase generates the highest expectations. And it also generates highest pressure, as all want the new solutions to be deployed soon and across the board. A timely and successful deployment proves that the solutions resulting from R&D and industrialization can make a difference, and that all the efforts dedicated to them have paid off. It's a gateway for innovation to make its way into operations. The deployment manager and you all have done a great job in this pilot phase of the SESAR deployment framework, and we have gained an invaluable experience on how to synchronize the deployment of the most important ATM functionalities over the entire network. Nicholas, you and your team, with the support of your members, have developed the first European SESAR deployment program, assisting and advising stakeholders on its implementation. Congratulations for this impressive work and for setting a solid basis for the future. You have become a central reference for an evolving partnership, allowing the active participation of industry in the deployment process. You have supported setting up over 300 implementation projects that you have coordinated and monitored, acting as a single and reliable interface with INEA. And I'm sure that afterwards Dirk can also elaborate on that. Deployment manager has been a very important interlocutor, always good to even repeat it if needed, between the Commission and the operational stakeholders when the COVID pandemic surged, anticipating its effects on the deployment plans and helping us to define mitigation measures, but most of all, keeping the partnership united. I also appreciate the valuable and timely advice and reporting on the implementation of pilot common project and the important technological enablers such as data link services and ADSP. Your work and the work of all implementing partners have provided important feedback, raising awareness on shortcomings in all phases and processes of the innovation cycle. Yes, there have been things that could have turned out better. There's nothing wrong with recognizing shortcomings. What is important, however, is that we learn from them, correct them, and find renewed motivation and ambition to do better. Data link is one of those examples. But what is important is that we learned from the process, took the necessary action, and put it back on track together. The SESAR Deployment Alliance has also evolved over these past 5 years. The initial consortium became a single legal entity. It has continuously developed its organization to ensure better connection and cooperation with the operational stakeholders, with the Commission and INEA, and with many other aviation organizations. It has developed a sustainable in-house expertise in managing multi-stakeholder projects and coordinating union grants. These efforts for an evolutionary continuity reflect the high level of commitment of the SESAR Deployment Alliance staff and members. Thank you. With all this experience, we should now close this pilot exercise and continue our venture with a renewed confidence and awareness, adapting ourselves to an evolving context largely affected by the pandemic. And we are doing it through different initiatives. In November, we will still present to our member states our proposal for Common Project 1, resulted from a thorough review of the pilot Common Project. And by the way, I would say a gift for today's event, this morning, the Single European Sky adopted it with consensus. Great. It was really a great achievement, and I think very well marking our event today with a positive spirit. We have also used this review to adapt and clarify many provisions related to the SESAR deployment framework, including the deployment manager, in particular to help coordinate the work of all partners that implement projects. These adoptions and Common Project 1 take into account the recommendations also of the European Court of Auditors on the readiness for implementation of some functionalities or on their need for synchronized deployment. Our ambition is that Common Project 1 sets the benchmark for future common projects, and now it is there to do so. As you well know, we are also at the end of Union's multi-annual financial framework, and consequently at the end of the framework partnership agreement we have awarded to the SESAR Deployment Alliance. We will have to select a new deployment manager next year through an open competition according to the setup prescribed in the law. This would be an opportunity to give new impetus to the SESAR deployment governance building on the existing experience and achievements. There is a need to integrate a stronger operational dimension through a reinforced participation of the network manager in the work of the deployment manager. More active cooperation with the network manager is also an opportunity to prepare the path for the future infrastructure manager role, which we have already envisaged in our amended SES2 proposal. We also see the need for a stronger role for EASA in addressing the industrialization gap that has been a major cause for deployment delays and better involve Eurocar. However, it's not a new start, it's rather an evolution to ensure a more effective continuity of the ATM innovation cycle. I expect that the future deployment manager will take full advantage of and build upon the experience, the know-how, and the stakeholder confidence that the SESAR Deployment Alliance has achieved over the past years. The appointment of the new deployment manager is part of a wider renewal process that comprises the update of the European ATM Master Plan, the review of the pilot common project, and the preparation of the new SESAR-free joint undertaking. Furthermore, next year, the European Parliament and the Council will adopt the new Connecting Europe Facility and Horizon Europe funding programs. This means that within the next year or so, we will have the main implementing and funding instruments of the entire SESAR ecosystem. Moreover, the SES2 Plus proposal, which now enshrines SESAR as the Union's ATM modernization project, better connects SESAR deployment with the performance scheme through the performance plans. This is what is needed to pave the way to future success and to further success. The future SES project aims to have clearer, stable objectives and priorities defined in the ATM Master Plan. Its research and deployment activities will focus on delivering highly mature solutions that facilitate industrialization processes. And as a result, SESAR solutions should be deployed faster. All these initiatives are important to ensure that the Single European Sky and SESAR fully and effectively contribute to the digital and environmental priorities of the Commission's Green Deal. Dear friends, the next steps are coming very soon and understandably absorb much of our attention. But we must also maintain focus on the present. The SESAR Deployment Alliance is still the deployment manager and has some challenging tasks ahead during its last mandate under the current framework partnership agreement. Just to mention one, the update of deployment program following the adoption of the Common Project 1. I still have many expectations from you, and I know I can also count on you as I have over the last 6 years. I would also like here to wholeheartedly thank Nicholas for his work and for his commitment. You have been a good and reliable partner for us, and together with your team, we have done many good things together. I would like to conclude by congratulating you for the excellent work you are doing and for your commitment to SESAR and the Single Sky as a whole. I fully understand the challenges you are experiencing, and I appreciate even more your efforts under these conditions. As I said in the beginning, partnerships and continuity are the key factors underlying the SESAR project, and the Commission will continue to support both. Thank you once again for your kind attention. Apologies also for the technical challenges that we had, but again, these are among the signs of current time. I wish you a very successful and, of course, thought-provoking event to come. Stay well, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawley, and we once again apologize for the technical inconveniences, but as highlighted by Mr. Hawley, this is happening into the live streaming, and we hope that we have your understanding. Thank you very much once again, Mr. Hawley, for taking the time to guide us through the future of the SESAR Deployment Manager function, ensuring further continuation towards a scalable and environmentally sustainable ATM system in the near future. But to be able to accomplish this, we need the continuous and consistent support from the ATM community, which will now address by us into the next poll, open for your feedback. Here it is. In April this year, 80% of all SDM stakeholders expressed their continuous commitment to ATM modernization. Despite the crisis, the European aviation industry is still committed to continue ATM modernization and consider SESAR deployment as key enabler to meet the Single European Sky high-level goals when the situation returns to a new normal. Again, the poll will be open for you for your live voting for the next 15 minutes. Thank you for your votes. After we have learned interesting details regarding the importance of the SDM function and the essential need for its continuity, I would like now to give the floor to my colleague Maria Grazia Lapiscopia, Chief Strategy and Program Management at the SESAR Deployment Manager, who will moderate the roundtable session and deepen the discussion on the present and the future of ATM modernization. Hello, Maria Grazia. Welcome, and you have the floor.
Hello, thank you, Madalena. Good morning, everybody, and many thanks to Enrico Lolei for his keynote. Sorry again for the IT issues, but as a friend said, it happens to all. So before starting, let me remind that today is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. This International Day was established in 1999 by the General Assembly of the United Nations and is held every year on the 25th of November. The day is also known as Orange Day because the color orange is recognized across the world as the chosen by the United Nations Gender Equality Body to symbolize a future without violence against women. Unfortunately, women and girls continue to suffer discrimination and violence across the world. Gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary condition for a prosperous, sustainable, and peaceful world. So, sorry for this to break, let's say, the sequence a little bit. So we can go back now to our panel. So as you listened, Henrik highlighted important elements related to SESAR deployment and the European ATM modernization. These, combined with the introductory remarks made by Nicholas, give us a good overview of what happened in the last 6 years, but also important hints on the challenges that aviation and ATM in particular will face in the next decade. To further discuss these aspects, I have the pleasure to moderate a roundtable with representatives of European institutions and SES bodies involved in ATM modernization. So with me today, unfortunately still in this virtual setting, there are Philippe Cornelis, Directorate General for Mobility and Transport from European Commission. Good morning, Philippe. Can you hear me?
Good morning, and happy to be with you, Maria Grazia.
Cristobal Milan de la Lastra, Head of Unit SEF Transport C2 from INEA, one of our long-standing partners in SESAR deployment. Good morning, Cristobal. Happy to have you with us today.
Good morning, Maria Grazia. It's a pleasure for me to be able to contribute to this discussion.
Thanks. Of course, no discussion on SESAR and ATM modernization will be exhaustive without engaging the SESAR joint undertaking into the debate. So that's why I am happy to have with us Florian Guillermin, Executive Director of the SESAR joint undertaking. Hello, Florian, and welcome to the...
Maria Grazia. Good morning, everyone. Good to be with you.
Also, welcome Paul Bosman, Head of ATM Infrastructure Division at the Eurocontrol Network Manager. NM and SDM are more and more working together on a number of programs and activities, bringing together, as it was suggested also before, expertise and resources to facilitate deployment. Good morning, Paul, and welcome to the panel.
Good morning, Maria Grazia. Good morning, everybody. And I'm also happy to say that the Dutch were early adopters of the color orange. So.
Okay. So another key partner of SDM and key player in SESAR deployment activity is the European Defence Agency. So I welcome Emilio Fajardo, Director Industry Synergies and Enablers at EDA. I hope you can see as well and hear me well.
Good morning, Maria Grazia, and I hear you well. My pleasure to be here and happy to contribute to this panel, of course.
Perfect. Of course, with us, the SDM General Manager, to discuss about present, past, and future of SESAR deployment. Welcome back, Nicholas, to the discussion. So let me recall to the audience that you can make your question via the live chat. I will try to accommodate them at the end of the panel. Of course, if there is enough time, or at least respond to you in writing after the meeting. As the time is limited, let's immediately dive into our conversation about SESAR deployment and in particular focus on what is needed to help our common journey to innovate European ATM. So the political and institutional debate in the last months has seen a strong focus and commitment on aviation sustainability. Indeed, a responsibility shared by all stakeholders and ATM players. Therefore, my first question to Philippe is which role the ATM modernization and SESAR deployment have in contributing to the European Green Deal objectives?
Well, thank you, Maria Grazia, for starting off with this question, because indeed the environmental agenda in the framework of the European Green Deal is for us really one of the overriding focus areas in the coming years, and particularly of the von der Leyen Commission. And we have recently set ourselves the ambition of delivering a 90% reduction in transport-related greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, as well as an ambitious target by 2030 already. And it's clear that all transport modes, including aviation, and within aviation, all the components of the ecosystem will have to contribute in order to achieve that ambitious goal, and ATM modernization will be part of that. We know that there is a scope of up to 10% of emissions that can be gained by having the most optimized air traffic management system. But for that, we need indeed a highly interoperable system in Europe, a smart system, and a good integration with other modes. We need to continue to work on issues such as improving the flow on traffic based on optimal flight paths, including free route, optimizing the separation of aircraft, more effective departure and arrival management, as some of the areas where we can work to reduce unnecessary delays and therefore unnecessary emissions. The ATM systems also will need to be capable in the future of allowing the most modern aircraft capabilities to be used to the full, for example, for performance-based landing and takeoff. And to get to that smart future that will deliver those environmental benefits, we will need to have better data sharing. We will need collaborative decision-making enabled by digital technologies and air traffic data services that will allow us to achieve that optimization also cross-border. So the things that we have on the agenda in SESAR definitely are highly relevant for that European Green Deal objective. Thank you.
Many thanks, Philippe. Indeed, a number of the elements you mentioned are part of, were part of the PCP and are now part of the Common Project 1. So I also fully share your views that the entire aviation ecosystem, it's time that cooperate more and more. So together with the ATM stakeholders, INEA and SDM started their joint work in 2015. And the results were mentioned by Nicolas in his opening speech. So I go now to Cristobal. So what was, in your view, the added value of the SESAR deployment manager in the last 6 years?
Thank you, Maria Grazia. I hope I'm heard.
Yes.
Well, I mean, sincerely, to my understanding, without an entity like this as a deployment manager, it would have been extremely complex, if not impossible, to achieve the results mentioned by Nicolas. The partnership established for the SESAR deployment gives a legitimacy to its role vis-à-vis the wide range of stakeholders they have to work with, such as the airlines, manufacturers, service providers, airports. So back in 2014, when the SDM submitted their first applications of funding, INEA adapted the standard approach and started to work with clusters of projects. INEA is following this approach exclusively with the SDM because of this particular setup. And this approach has proven to be very suitable to synchronize investments and maximize the use of available funding. However, a prerequisite for success has been the sort of evolutionary continuity that Henrik has mentioned. Through this evolution, it is clear to me that the SDM has displayed the necessary flexibility and open-mindedness. During these last 6 years, quite considerable efforts have been necessary from both sides, from INEA and the SDM, to make the best use of the available funding. In this context, the SDM has learned how to provide the best service to their members and at the same time follow the sound financial management rules enshrined by the grant agreement signed with INEA. Despite challenges, SDM has successfully delivered good results in a very short time. This is certainly also owed to the people behind the organization, their dedication to create the European added value, and their technical expertise gained over the years. That's in a nutshell what I think about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your words. And indeed, you mentioned the role of SDM as coordinator of investing stakeholders. And among these, I believe a key role is played by the military authorities. And since fall 2015, many of them joined the Framework Partnership Agreement, implementing the pilot common projects. And this was possible thanks to the strong collaboration with the European Defence Agency. So, Emilio, did it work? Was it beneficial? What else can be done?
Maria Grazia, I think you can hear me.
Yes.
I think the image is frozen. I don't know why. This is probably the problems of the live connections, but you can hear me, I think.
Yes, sure.
Okay, as you well know, Maria Grazia, the involvement in SDM activities from military was also a new approach for the military people. So we had to learn and first to know how to get involved, which was something that we worked on that quite a lot. And in this context, I have to say that the cooperation between the EDA and the SDM has been from the very beginning remarkable and an excellent example on how cooperation should be run and demonstrating that benefits in both sides can be achieved. Thanks to this cooperation in EDA, as it was requested by member states, has supported the military involvement in the framework of SESAR deployment through offering common but also military expert views in a very consistent and a very consolidated way for SESAR deployment activities. We have been also supporting deployment activities and programs, especially with the aim to participate in Connecting Europe facility calls and providing you and our participating member states with technical expertise and advise upon request. This has contributed quite a lot to better military involvement in the SESAR deployment. And also, as you all well know, and as a concrete result, we, the military, obtained 93 million euros from the military projects in the framework of SESAR deployment, and in this case, contributing to improving the performance of the network and the related benefits for all stakeholders. So the projects also contributed to enhance the very necessary and required military and civil interoperability through a much better understanding of the respective constraints and needs. Maria Grazia.
Thank you, Emilio. I think you mentioned the high level of cooperation, the fruitful sharing of knowledge and expertise, and all performance. These are all aspects that all define the cooperation, also define the cooperation that we have with the network manager. So since the joint signature of the cooperative arrangement, we have always worked together. We started with our initial work on the first edition of the SESAR deployment program in 2015. And recently, we have reinforced our cooperation on key deployment areas, such as data link and ADSB, where I believe we achieved significant results, thanks to the stakeholders' commitment and the NM operational and network perspective. So, Paul, where do you see the added value of the cooperation between network manager and SDM, and between operational network perspective and deployment?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Maria Grazia, and thank you for that question. Indeed, since the creation of the SDM, we've seen, first of all, a memorandum of cooperation between SDM and the NM, the network manager, later extended as well to the whole of Eurocontrol. Then I think it's about a year ago that we started to work much closer together with all the different operational stakeholders of the SESAR Deployment Alliance to prepare for the next deployment manager. And as indicated as well by Henrik Holelai, that will be an open call for tender process. But as also published in a press release last week, it is our intention to totally team up between all the different operational stakeholders and us as Eurocontrol network manager to really make sure that we offer the best of our capabilities to the wide European industry. And also, I think we need to maybe demystify a little bit what we're trying to do there. I think it is really in sense of teaming up the best efforts and the real pool of expertise. I mean, if I look at the slides and the results that also Nicola presented earlier this morning, I think it is fantastic. The SDM is a true success for Europe. We can be very proud of what we have been achieving so far. And so our intention would be to become part of that success and try to bring it to even further heights, to really make sure that we can come out of this current crisis as quick as possible, as best as possible, to move it all forward. So what we thereby have in mind is that what we bring to the table is the network perspective. I think what we have, and I think we are demonstrating that again through the current crisis, we are updating every week at the moment the current plan of what the traffic capacity needs are, what is the availabilities at both the ATC centers, the airports, etc. And we keep a very close finger on the pulse on what European-wide are truly the needs, and I think that expertise will be very beneficial to what we are going to do further together. Another example is that I think it's also now since a good year, we have really started to work excellently well together on the data link. It was also mentioned earlier already today. Eurocontrol provides there first of all, the monitoring capabilities, as it is a responsibility in the network functions implementing rule. But again, through having that finger on the pulse, I think we've been able to set up together the data link support group. And I think through the different meetings, I think we've done really good work in, again, after all these years of data link, and I think also Florian will remember one or two things of it, I think we are really we're really making it now into operations. And I think that's this demonstrating what you can expect in in a much wider scale when we further team up our efforts. I think another point that we should highlight is that we're going to bring the best of both worlds together in terms of stakeholder consultation. As Nicola also referred to, you have I think the really good stakeholder consultation platform, which is in an unprecedented way embracing the inputs from all the people across the whole spectrum, etc. At the same time, you have in the network manager the working arrangements, the NMCDM working arrangements, where we are putting together around the table on a systematic basis all the directors of operations, the directors of technology, etc. And so I think by now blending these two consultation mechanisms, I think we're going to make sure that we're going to have a single value chain, a single place of decision making all together, and always industry-led. So I think these are just practical, tangible examples that I think everybody can relate to. And the last point that I would like to mention is that, as you all know, we are a co-founder of the SESAR joint undertaking, and we hope to be again of the new vehicle that's being put in place. We recently opened in the EASA Technical Cooperation Office, and I think these are just small examples. We have seconded people to the European Defence Agency. I think we are truly a partner also at the institutional framework, and I think by again combining all these best efforts, I think we're going to do a lot of good for European ATM.
Thank you, Paul, for this important message. Indeed, industry and stakeholders are at the center, and we all need to do an effort to support them in the next steps. So, of course, the journey is far from being over, and we need to accelerate towards a digitalized and efficient infrastructure. This will help making European ATM more resilient, scalable, economical, and environmentally sustainable. But deployment is just a piece of the puzzle, as we stated also before. So I would like to ask to Florian, but also to everybody afterwards. So Florian, what are the ways and instruments that we could use to support this journey together?
Well, I think that what is clear to me is there will not be a SESAR research and development without deployment, and the other way around. So the two, first of all, they go hand in hand, and I think it makes sense to capitalize, as it has just been explained by Paul, on what has been achieved so far. And we do see a number of achievements that would not have been possible without the deployment manager, without, I would say, the setup of the SESAR project as a whole. And I think from that standpoint, we can acknowledge as well that the decisions that have been made in the past by the European Commission to kickstart all these activities have been wise, as they have indeed contributed to improving the overall performance of the system. I think, nevertheless, indeed, there are clear areas where we can I will say beef up this or strengthen this endeavor. I mean, the area of network impact, network management is definitely where we should have a greater focus, and I think this is the sense as well of the evolution that is ahead of us. I believe as well one of the elements that we have characterized in the airspace architecture work that took place some time ago is the need to create momentum with the stakeholders themselves. So I do believe that the deployment setup is an instrument of doing that, but it has to be complemented as well by the CES regulation at large. The fact that, for instance, we need to make sure that we constantly incentivize the early movers in the system if we want to move it forward. And I think this is as well the sense that is now given with the evolution of the CES through the CES 2+. So that's really as well an area where I believe we will get benefits in the years to come.
Many thanks, Florian. So Philippe, your views on this?
Yes, well, this relates to what we have come to call the innovation cycle, which refers to the fact that we are faced here in Europe in the ATM area with an enormous task of modernizing the way we function, but at the same time with a number of difficulties, not least the fact that the landscape is quite fragmented. We have many players, many different countries with different air navigation service providers, but also the system in aviation is very interconnected. So we need everybody on board, also the airlines, manufacturers, etc. And there is a strong need for coordination in order to make that modernization actually happen. And secondly, we have another difficulty, that this is a sector that is very much regulated, specifically on the safety side. So everything we do in changing the systems, modernizing, and particularly a big shift towards a digital single sky, we have to be sure that it is safe, and therefore again, the intervention of public authorities, regulators, in particular EASA, is also absolutely essential. And we need as well, because we have so many players, an important role for commonly agreed solutions. And this is where SESAR, JU, SDM come in, because they bring together all the players in collaborative decision making. That needs to lead at the end to deployable products. And here we need to put a bit more emphasis in the future. That's our intention with SESAR 3 and the future SDM and infrastructure manager, to link them up more effectively, to avoid a valley of death in between them, bring in more clearly EASA and EUROCAE, so that we make better than in the past that link towards deployment. But and also I think at the end of the day, in some cases we have to mandate the implementation of certain functionalities that are definitely in the interest of the network. Mandate them on the one hand, and we are doing this, for example, with the CP1 that was voted successfully this morning in the Single Sky Committee, as Henry Cololay was saying, but also with a system of incentives and possibly penalties for early deployment and good deployment, in terms of incentives and penalties for those who are not deploying the necessary functionalities that are essential for the network. So those are a little bit, from our perspective, the ingredients needed and the mechanisms where we can bring everybody together for this quite unique collective challenge to modernize.
Thank you, Philippe. Indeed, important messages. Cristobal, your views on the topic?
Thank you, Maria Grazia. Well, first I should say, INEA, you know, we are managing the CEF program, okay? We will have the CEF 2 program, so this is our framework to provide financing under the guidelines from DigiMove. So we are in that framework. So, but I couldn't agree more to two aspects that have been mentioned previously by Florian and Philippe, is the issue of financing the early movers, because we know that the resources to help deploying ATM are limited, and therefore one way of prioritization is to reward the early movers. That's a key point. And another aspect that I have heard is to improve the link between research and deployment. As you know, INEA is very close to the projects. We know all the details. We follow them very closely. Therefore, one of the aspects that we have experienced is the lack of maturity of some projects, because there were some issues that had to be tackled that were between research and deployment. So any effort in that aspect would improve the efficiency of the funds dedicated to ATM. And then I would like to add the third aspect is the attention to absorption capacity, because one of the things that we have experienced with projects is that, okay, sometimes ambition, that is good, of course, goes beyond the possibilities of a particular beneficiary. So in order to guarantee that this absorption takes place adequately, the absorption capacity should be a factor when deciding to engage in a new project. So these are some elements from my side, Maria Grazia.
Thank you for Cristobal for the messages. I think it's really important to ensure that there are no interruptions between R&D and deployment. So to grant that there is a flow in the ATM value chain. So Emilio, your point on this.
Thank you, Maria Grazia. Of course, you know well, I mean, the military community, we have always been, broadly speaking, supporting moving towards a digitalized infrastructure and addressing the needs of any upcoming challenges in the air traffic management systems, and looking always for the benefit for users in this case. The military community we have already implemented many different measures for the interest of the network, including in terms of in terms of airspace management and use. It's again still sensitive for us, the environmental issues, and we have also engaged in national actions contributing to the European Green Deal. So very much looking to that different aspects. We have always, the military aviation have always been very supportive regarding the deployment of new technologies, and in fact, the military has entered in this new era many years ago. We have the new generation of aircraft are multi-mission. They have enhanced efficiency derived from the ability to manage and exchange with other assets, and be they airborne or on the ground. This is made possible thanks to the introduction of digital solutions that we have done in the past. And furthermore, digitalization has also changed the way in the military plans and executes military air operations. In many sense, given that the military have already invested a lot in these new technologies, and at a time when the civil aviation sector is being modernized through the development and deployment of many new emerging technologies linked to digitalization, connectivity, artificial intelligence, and automation, for us, interoperability and synergies are keywords and continue to be keywords. To limit additional, of course, equipment requirements for military assets, and also the related costs to operate in a modernized ATM system. Against all this background, civil-military collaboration, I think we should explicitly consider peculiarities of the military by enabling the assessment of all potential mitigation measures up front, looking to the whole spectrum of the SES related domains and solutions, that going from conformity to exemptions and including dedicated incentives. We think that a performance-based approach in all domains pertaining to Single European Sky will facilitate the civil-military cooperation, and it should span across all levels, from technical to strategic at the national and EU level, through appropriate coordination mechanisms imposed by law, regulation, top-down approach, and appropriate monitoring. I think we think as an overall approach that this should apply to all domains pertaining a Single European Sky in these cases. So that is the military perspective to this moving to the digitalized infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Emilio. Indeed, civil-military cooperation is key for the entire network performance. So now back to Paul. What are your views on the possible instruments that we can use to facilitate this journey together?
Okay, so yeah, thank you very much. I think when you refer to instruments, I think we were talking, first of all, I think our planning instruments, then I think there's also the element of financial instruments. I think when it first comes to the planning instruments, many of you were involved in the last months when, together with SDU and SDM, we developed this operational excellence plan, which sets the priorities for the next 5 years. The NMB last week successfully approved this document. So I think we really have now a subset of all the things we potentially could do altogether. I think we've started to trim it down to really what we think altogether is essential. Now, together with the fantastic news that the CP1 has been approved this morning in the Single Sky Committee with consensus, I think we now have the planning elements, planning instruments in our hands to really make sure, okay, this is now the things that we should be working on. And I wouldn't be calling the other things hobbies, but they are just maybe of a lower priority at this moment. That doesn't also mean that we stop working on them. And what we, for the moment, decided to put in what we call the parking lot are things like satellite communication, GBus Cat2, Cat3. These are topics we've been discussing for years, if not decades, in Europe. And I think we need to come. We have a lot of cooks in the kitchen in Europe, and I think it would be very good if now together we can have a much better a single decision making on what we're going to do with these topics. And I'm not going to say we're going to still do it all. There is reduced money available in the system, so we need to decide what is it that is really truly required from an operational perspective. What are the operational needs and requirements that we need to fulfill? There's also the topic of what we initially called CNS rationalization. Later we rephrased it into CNS infrastructure evolution, but the intentions are still very much the same. It is to make use of what's happening through BBN and ADSB and see can we come to a more rational CNS infrastructure in Europe. And this would involve completely the military, of course. They're very concerned when we start to talk about decommissioning elements, etc. So it's a debate that we absolutely must do together. Now, when it comes to the financial instruments, first of all, of course, we're very much looking at next calls from the CEF funds, and we're really looking forward to see the approvals at the political level to make sure that these funds become available to also the ATM industry. But most likely, we also need to look at other more creative instruments to do our financing. We live in an ATM world where I would still say the majority of our assets are owned by the organizations themselves. And maybe we need to look at more modern financing vehicles that we see also in other industries, whereby we start more for leasing equipment, etc., and we take away the burden of doing heavy investments from all the different players, and we can go to more a common way of providing these infrastructure services to everybody. Well, I think these are just some ideas. I'm sure that the audience also has some ideas of their own. So again, I give it back to you, Maria Grazia.
Thank you, Paul. So I have to say that I share the views expressed up to now, and but I also believe that the last 6 years' experience of SDM could help in the future. So, Nicola, what are the main lessons learned that could help continue the journey, the deployment journey?
Thank you, Maria Grazia, and I will, of course, answer with pleasure this question. But before that, I would like to say a few words, because I was carefully listening the discussion this morning. I thank really all the participants for the quality of this discussion. Of course, I cannot miss to thank Henrik in particular for his very kind words vis-à-vis the SESAR deployment manager, myself, and my team. Now, back to your question, many lessons, I would say, because in fact, has been mentioned before that we have been totally pioneer into this role of SESAR deployment manager. And when the SESAR Deployment Alliance started in the role, we had no predecessor. What we had was a kind of feuille de route through the existing regulation, but everything has to be invented. However, to keep my list short enough and focused enough, I would like just to pick up some of the topics which have just been mentioned before. And the first one is the death valley to which Philippe has referred, which exists indeed between the end of the SGU cycle and the start of the SDM cycle. As Florian said, SGU, SDM, by design, we are very close together and we work closely together. But in practice, indeed, between the end of a validation of a solution by the SGU and the start of the time by which this solution is available, ready for implementation, there is this gap which maybe in the first period has not been fully addressed. And we are all aware that if we have any delay in the deployment, that's also because of the cumulative effect of the delays that could happen into this death valley. So, of course, we welcome the more important role by EASA into this specific part of the SESAR life cycle. And I'm sure that it would help. But I believe it also needs joint forces, also in this industrialization phase, by all the stakeholders into this specific, but in fact, very crucial phase. My second point is with the very wide nature of a pilot common project or a common project in general. We started with the idea that common project was already narrow enough because I recall that a common project was nothing else than the idea to take out from the ATM master plan and prioritize what was considered at some point in time as the most essential operational improvement. But then quickly enough, we realized that still a common project was a big boat, and inside this big boat there was a need to further prioritize. And call after call we have learned, in particular referring to the notion of family in the SESAR deployment program, to have better focused call, also call which were more there to support the early mover than to reward the late movers. And of course, this tendency has to be increased, better focus, more support to the early mover into the future, into the next call. By the way, the call 19, which was totally focused on one single family with one single priority, is very representative, I believe, of the evolution that must happen for the future call. My next point is the SESAR deployment program itself. To me, it's a vital document. This is really the project view that all the operational stakeholders required to invest needs to get organized. The regulation really provides a frame, but this frame is not detailed enough. Normal, it's a regulation, not detailed enough. And this is where the deployment program brings its full value. I tend to summarize my view saying that the deployment program brings the how, whereas the regulation is really the what, the where, the when, and who is required to implement. And it is my conviction that the how will be more and more vital in the future, because when we look forward, when we look at what remains to be implemented, in fact, the most ambitious things now in the CP1, I must say, because I have to refer also me to this very good news we received all this morning to have CP1 supported by the Single Sky Committee. So the CP1, the most advanced feature in the CP1, requires to implement solutions that must be implemented on a pan-European basis in order to have an efficient deployment, in order to bring maximum and as early as possible performance gain to the network. And this requires both a deployment program and a deployment manager. So, as been said already this morning, that deployment manager brought value, added value, And my conviction is that the SDM function will be more and more needed in the future as we are going to implement more and more pan-European solutions to support European network performance. My last point, and it's kind of short list, would have many more to say, but we are limited by time. But my next and last point is our modus operandi. I am particularly proud the way we have been involved, we have been able to involve very far beyond our membership and even far beyond the partnership of already 100, so beyond 100 implementing partners, through this modus operandi. Every key document that we deliver to the Commission, in particular the deployment program I mentioned before, also the common project proposal, notes, document about architecture, strategy, data link, all these type of things. All these documents, we consult them with or giving the chance for anyone in the ATM community to react, to provide comments, to which we pay attention, to which we take time to answer. There is a dialogue, there are exchanges, there are meetings. And at the end, when we deliver to the Commission, it is with unprecedented level of buying. And the buying, as I said in my introduction, is the key when you talk about deployment. Buying is required because at the end, you have to address those who are required to invest, to put their money on the table, and they must be convinced that it is beneficial not only for the entire community, but also by themselves, if needed, supported by EU funding. So in a nutshell, that's really my 4 main lessons learned. Again, many more I would like to add, but I think it's important to save time for our guests today and the other panelists to continue the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicolas. On the role of the deployment program, and you know how much I am fond of it, so I think that Common Project 1 is stressing even more the key role of the deployment program. Then you also mentioned the importance of having stakeholders widely engaged into the process as it leads to faster deployment. In this perspective, so a faster deployment, I would like to go back to Florian. And Florian, what could be further exploited in terms of coordination between R&D and deployment to accelerate the market uptake of SESAR solutions?
Well, I think that the way I see the SESAR project as a whole is a kind of a push-pull exercise. I mean, to me, we can, from an R&D standpoint, come up with the best solutions we want, with nice things from a technology or operational standpoint. It is very essential that the industry is ready to take it. And from that standpoint, I think it was already mentioned by both Philippe and Nicolas and Paul that we need to find a way to better address the so-called valley of death, even though I'm not sure the ones who are stuck in there would like to have this name applied to what they're doing. But nevertheless, we know what we're talking about. And I think this is the complementarity that we have to find better. I think as well, in terms of push and pull exercise, the loop feedback or the feedback loop from the deployment into research and development is quite essential. I mean, the first time I really saw it active was on the data link, and I think this was really helpful. Sometimes we have probably difficulties because we don't deal exactly with the same group of stakeholders and so on, but we need to make sure that we keep this synchronization happening, and probably that we make it more, I would say, alive than just processes and so on. And to me, this has been, for instance, extremely useful to participate to the exercise conducted by the NM in terms of looking at the short-term priority, because that's a direct feedback that I can, digest and inject into what we're doing. So I think these are examples of how we can improve things in the future. future. To me as well, one key element is the readability that we provide to the stakeholders community, and I think that this goes as often in the Brussels arena through documents and so on. So being mindful about how we align the different programs and the different plans and so on that we have, I think is important, because this is what gives the direction, what sets the momentum to the rest of the community. And of course, whether they are willing to do it or not, I'm not accusing them necessarily of being willing to do that, but if they see gaps and holes and misalignment, then usually that's not good to drive the system forward.
I fully agree. Now switching to something else. So you all mentioned the impact, and we all know the impact that COVID-19 crisis had on aviation industry and potentially the risk on ATM modernization. From a military perspective, looking to the future, Emilio, so how do you see the engagement of military considering this crisis? Do you believe there could be financial impacts on the military procurement plans, for example?
Thank you, Maria Gracia. I mean, you know that the military was not very much, has not been very much operationally affected by the COVID-19 crisis. I mean, nevertheless, we are much afraid that the potential economic downturn will and could be affecting negatively to the national defense budget. This is our main concern. From the military perspective, some military has already expressed the concerns with regard to the difficulties that they had with the payment of the incentivized projects that were funded by the initial SESAR deployment, and maybe such difficulties might happen again regarding other projects in which the military will be involved. In any case, the financial implication of Single European Sky on military should be better taken into account, and we think that dedicated incentives, when we look to the new amended SES2 Plus for the military, should be envisaged in that case. Nevertheless, in the current context we have today, there is also, on the contrary, a unique and unexpected opportunity for making dual-use capability development in the aviation, including air traffic management domain. And we think that also we can seek much more civil-military synergies leading to cost savings, which could be of a lot of interest in the military community. We, in the European Defence Agency, as the cooperation platform we will continue to help and to facilitate the military access to the civilian EU funds, such as, Connecting Europe Facility, military mobility, and maybe look into the future European defence funds. And we will try to stimulate and further military cooperation in the framework of Single European Sky by supporting, of course, collaborative projects that are promoting dual-use technologies and dual-use solutions. In that context, as I said before, the European defence funds might potentially bring and contribute to a wider range of civil and civilian EU policies with direct implications on defence capabilities, including Single European Sky and SESAR. Complementary to these activities and between these policies and their funding instruments, we need to be and to ensure that we could better exploit all possible synergies in this context. And with this, I give back the floor to you. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the points made, Emilio. Indeed, COVID-19 has a shock to the European economy almost 9 months ago. And this is expected to affect the aviation industry for years to come. Some numbers were mentioned by Paul also before. At the same time, however, from the survey and the analysis that the SDM has performed, industry stakeholders also agree that modernization activities should not be completely frozen. So in this context, Philippe, how easy is the European Commission planning to support the investing stakeholders to cope with the current financial constraints and encourage them to keep the pace with the SESAR deployment?
Yes, well, first of all, I think we do have to acknowledge that the sector is in a profound and unprecedented crisis, and of course is entirely focused on surviving this period and being able to pay people's salaries and other costs, and of course to bring back the traffic is the second focus, because at the end of the day, the health of the sector can only come back if there's going to be passengers and cargo to finance the aviation sector. We have been trying to do what we could, putting in place exceptional measures in the area of state aid, for example, that allow member states to intervene where necessary, and also in the ATM sector this is possible. I know that INEA has also been helping out to mitigate the situation by helping with pre-financing of projects more than usual, and also easing the reporting requirements, because we know that in many organizations quite a few people have been put on short-time work or temporary unemployment. So we try to respond to the current situation, but what I would want to say looking forward is that we should definitely not abandon or slow down the modernization of the ATM. We can see already now that if things develop positively and the vaccination will be successful, we can be back in the situation we were in 2018-19 with extreme congestion. We can be back there in a couple of years. So now is really the time to take actions to prepare for that and to be better able to deal with such situations. Perhaps also the fact that there is less traffic also allows now to undertake some changes and upgrades that are more difficult to realize when there is an overwhelming level of traffic. So this would really be our hope and expectation, that we can maintain the continuity. We are also putting in place all the instruments for the future. SESAR 3 will be proposed in a couple of weeks. There will be the call for the next SDM. There is going to be the new Connecting Europe facility budget. So all the elements will be in place to ensure continuity from our side, and we need all the industry stakeholders to not abandon the modernization. Particularly, I would say also on the ANSP side, thanks to the performance and charging scheme that we have in Europe, they have today cash flow problems, but generally speaking, they are well financed and can maintain the investments that are required. So we're definitely ready and hopeful to work with all the stakeholders in that new cycle, the new financial cycle for the EU that starts on the 1st of January, but which hopefully will also be the year when we can put COVID behind us, or begin to put it behind us. Back to you, Maria Grazia.
Thank you, Philippe. So I will continue on the same line, as I believe it is very important for all of us and mostly for the audience. So operational stakeholders, as we all stated, are facing difficulties to restore their investments capability and availability of funding support to ensure a synchronized deployment will be, of course, a key push, a key prerequisite. So, Cristobal, is INEA considering a new mechanism or innovative arrangements for providing grants or other forms of support to SESAR deployment?
Yes, thank you, Maria Grazia. As I said before, I mean, we are implementing the Connecting Europe Facility program. Therefore, this is our framework. What is in our remit is to how to implement it, how to tackle this framework. So Philippe has rightly said that some facilities for further pre-financing have been made available. We had also, in agreement with the SDM, facilitated some reporting requirements. But notably and in general, the SEP program has been extended 1 year. The decision back in June was to allow the projects to be implemented instead of by the end of 2023 to go until the end of 2024. So this is an allowance that will enable some projects that are delayed by COVID to catch up to a certain extent. I very much agree with the following point. Before I was mentioning the absorption capacity. We have, when monitoring certain projects, we have realized that some of the projects were delayed because of the heavy traffic. Okay, and the concerned technical persons to implement the projects were very involved in operational issues. Now, if of course, if the payroll allows, it could be a window of opportunity to engage in certain complex projects, complex digitalization projects, with a workforce that otherwise would have to be temporarily unoccupied because of the lack of traffic. So, of course, it's not simple. It's not a simple equation because, of course, without income, the salaries of the technical employees cannot be covered. But there should be formulas to bridge the gap and to take the opportunity to tackle projects now that otherwise, when the traffic comes back, will be complex to tackle.
Yeah.
So that's the elements from my side.
Thank you, Cristobal. I believe I'm looking at the time. I don't have a lot of time. I would have liked to make some other questions, but unfortunately, time is not helping. So I would like to. I'm looking also if there are questions. Let me see from the audience. Yes, there is one before I go to the conclusion. One question is coming from Michael Scala from LPS, so the Slovak NSPs, and he's addressing a very important point that I believe we also mentioned during our discussion, as the question refers to the CP1 regulation. So I think it's more for Philippe. So Philippe, how this new proposal will affect or benefit the future of ATM modernization? I think we touched already the point, but if you want to cover it.
No, I think also Paul earlier on made some good remarks on this point. What the CP1 will do for us is to create that work program for the coming years of a number of functionalities that we all must together put in place. The program is actually slimmed down from the ambitions of the past because, first of all, we have taken into account perhaps a lower absorption capacity in the coming years, but also very much we've taken into account the remarks of the Court of Auditors, European Court of Auditors, and that were also echoed by several in the panel, Nicolas among others, about the maturity of projects, to make sure that what is in there is truly mature and deployable. I think that is really the work program for us together, and where the focus of public intervention from our side through the Connecting Europe facility will be. Of course, focusing on those who have a negative business case to deploy those functionalities, and those who are really early movers and taking some technological risks in particular. But I also agree with what Paul said. It does not mean that other useful innovations should not be pursued.
Indeed. So, Nicolas, I still Michael. Focus is on CP1. And also he's asking the link between CP1 and the future of SDM. I don't know if you want to add something to what Philippe has just said.
Yes, indeed. From our side, because of course CP1 has been a long-lasting work on our side. Also, SGU has been very active into this review of the pilot common project. So today it's coincidence that it comes today, but I think it's a key milestone. And this green light from the member states now is a promise of a soon to be adopted common project number 1, which will for us enable as one of our last major tasks the update of the deployment program against this new CP1. And this deployment program that we will deliver by July next year to the European Commission, again, after due consultation in accordance with the modus operandi I was referring to before, this updated deployment program will throw the basis, technical reference for all the upcoming calls for further implementation action under the CEF2. So needless to say that it is a very important and critical path towards ATM modernization. Maybe last word, it's a coincidence. I believe it's a coincidence, but at the end, a very good one, that CP1 is coming at the time the SDM function will continue, but at the same time, the body in charge of the function may be renewed and taking advantage of all the lessons learned during the past 6 years. I believe with this new couple, CP1 and renewal of the body in charge of running the deployment manager function, the European Union is very well equipped to have another successful period that will go until 2027 with even more significant achievements towards even more performance for the network. Because, of course, even if we don't need performance right now, we are all aware that the need for performance and even greater performance, or greener performance, I should say, will come back hopefully very soon. So I stop there because I'm fully aware of the time constraints that we have due to this virtual setup. Thank you again. My thanks, my personal thanks to all the panelists. And if I may, Maria Grazia, my congratulations to you for the very good moderation.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's time to close now, really, and we will try to address and respond to further questions in the upcoming days. However, I believe we were able to touch and listen to what are the main achievements in deployment, but also the lessons learned and the needed improvements to move forward. So all agreed that in such a difficult time, we need to join forces and work together towards a common goal, a modern, efficient, resilient, and environmental-friendly ATM. Philippe was clear in saying that the entire aviation ecosystem must cooperate and each actor should contribute with the knowledge and the resources of its own specific domain. In particular, I believe the proper involvement of industry stakeholders and their buy-in is a must, as their expertise and their capability to deliver are the key for a synchronized and timely deployment. And this is really experience. There was consensus on the need to close any remaining gap between R&D and implementation in order to make sure that the new solutions are rapidly available on the market for stakeholders to invest. It was also confirmed the need for a continuous feedback loop, we said several times, between deployment activities, the operational needs, and R&D, making sure that investments are focused on the actual needs of stakeholders and of the network. Also, the discussion confirmed the need for a lean and effective public funding supporting mechanism as an instrument to accelerate and synchronize deployment. Now, as a final note, considering the importance gained by the SDM function and its added value for all stakeholders, I would like to echo Nicolas' introduction and insist on the need to safeguard its full continuity throughout the upcoming transition from one partnership to another. I thank once again all the participants to the panel for your time and your contribution to the debate. And I also thank all the stakeholders connected. Madalena, the floor is back to you.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Maria Grazia.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Indeed, thank you very much, Maria Grazia, and also thank you to the roundtable guests for these enriching discussions. Now that we have learned the interesting perspective in which our panelist guests framed the necessity to continue the journey of ATM modernization through SESAR deployment and the importance for this journey to be jointly undertaken, we would like to offer once more to the audience the possibility to vote on our last poll of this morning's session. And this is enhancing and strengthening the cooperation between all stakeholders, industry and institutions will remain the key for successfully continuing the journey of ATM modernization. Again, this poll will be open for your vote for the next 15 minutes, and we would very much appreciate your feedback. Thank you. Now, going further and following the very interesting discussion we have witnessed throughout all the morning session for our event, I am pleased to announce to you Mr. Dirk Beckers, Director ANIA, providing to us the concluding remarks for our morning session. Enjoy.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members and partners of the SESAR Deployment Manager, dear Hendrik and dear Nicolas. Thank you for inviting me to deliver the closing remarks of this year's SESAR Deployment Manager annual event. Hendrik said in his opening keynote that this is a landmark event. I certainly could not agree more on that. We have had a very interesting morning session. We have heard the previous speakers highlight the most important achievements to date. Let me just underline again some of them. The SESAR Deployment Manager coordinates 350 projects. Those projects ensure the modernization of the European ATM system. More than 150 projects have already been completed to date. The projects involved investments of about 3 billion euros. SDM and the partners applied successfully for 1.3 billion euros of co-funding through the Connecting Europe facility. However, what is even more important, the projects are not just completed. They are already delivering tangible results and benefits to aviation stakeholders. The projects reduced the travel time for European citizens and led to fuel and CO2 reductions. The last 6 years have also shown how civil and military cooperation can be implemented. Military projects received a CEF funding of around 93 million euros to improve the civil-military interoperability. Moreover, the European Defence Agency provided the military expert view to SESAR. This delivers benefits for both sides, the civil and the military stakeholders. From INEA's side, I also want to underline another achievement, which is taken as a given, as it is considered so natural in the SESAR innovation cycle, namely the synergies between research and deployment. EU research projects do not end up stored in bookshelves. The SESAR partnership is an excellent example showing that research is also implemented. Nicolas has called the last 6 years a pioneer phase. I do remember very well the first meetings we had together when the CEF program started to support SESAR and we signed the first grant agreement to fund implementation of the pilot common project. For INEA, this first one and the ensuing grant agreements, together with the specific partnership, are very special. 6 years ago, industry partners took the driving seat to work together and ramp up an unprecedented partnership. Since then, the partnership has grown to more than 90 partners. It represents all main European aviation stakeholders like air navigation service providers, civil and military airspace users, airports, manufacturers, and agencies. Operational stakeholders are involved in deployment decisions from the beginning. Technological and operational decisions are taken side by side. And all these partners work together to ensure a European-wide synchronized SESAR deployment for the benefit of the European airspace and its citizens. The SDM's partnership is unique as it combines the industry's high expertise and, most importantly, its commitment. It is a truly European project. The SESAR Deployment Manager became a functioning organization within a very short time and in a highly complex environment. Despite the different challenges, I can confirm to Hendrik that the SDM has delivered results, as we heard in the panel discussions earlier on. This is certainly owed to the technical expertise of the people behind the organization and their dedication to create European added value. Therefore, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate all of you on this achievement. Without your dedication, we would not have come so far. However, today was not only about looking back, it was also about drawing lessons and looking into the future. As the panelists have mentioned, it was not always easy. Moving towards a digitalized infrastructure is critical for making aviation more scalable and environmentally friendly. Many improvements have been made since the Single Sky program was set up. Modernization of ATM is an enabler for almost all challenges of the aviation industry, and new solutions are needed to match old problems such as scalability, flexibility, and capacity. In this context, digitalization will also help to reduce the emissions to meet the targets of the European Green Deal. Therefore, implementing partners should not slow down with digitalization, even if it can be often complex to make progress in parallel with running operations. Digitalization also requires very specific expertise, which is not always available. Therefore, it is of utmost importance to use this network of expertise which this unique partnership offers. Stakeholders can build on the knowledge of others, and the deployment manager has facilitated this expertise exchange in the past. From a CEF funding perspective, we are very happy to see that projects were ambitiously planned. However, some lack the required maturity, which ultimately led to delays in implementation and to reduced absorption of EU funding. The importance of good project definition for successful funding was also mentioned in the panel. The SESAR deployment program provides a very good framework on the expected achievements of the projects. This should be the starting point when preparing funding applications. When we talk about challenges, I unfortunately can't avoid mentioning the current COVID pandemic. It had and still has a big impact on the aviation sector and on the implementation of projects. While the aviation sector has faced a capacity crunch in 2019 with records in daily traffic, it faces in 2020 a dramatic decrease in traffic. The deployment manager has kept me and my service informed of the impact on the projects. Let me reassure you that INEA, together with the Commission, will do its utmost to support you on the challenges you face, for example, by allowing additional time to implement the grant agreements, which comes in conjunction with the extension of implementation deadlines foreseen by the Common Project 1. It is important that ATM modernization does not slow down or even stop. SESAR must continue to progress and, when possible, take advantage of the drop in traffic to implement the improvements that would be difficult in normal times. Hendrik pointed out this morning that the European Commission is currently working on proposals on the future of the European Single Sky and the ATM innovation cycle. A stronger involvement of EASA in the industrialization phase is foreseen. Moreover, a new deployment manager will be selected in 2021. Also, the first CEF programming period is coming to an end this year, and very soon the European Parliament and the Council will adopt the new Connecting Europe Facility funding program. 2021 will also be a key transition year for INEA, because we are expecting a substantial enlargement of our portfolio, enlarging our scope in the implementation of the Green Deal. Indeed, we are in front of a future full of challenges and opportunities. However, we should not forget that there are still around 150 implementation projects ongoing, some only ending in 2023. Therefore, it is crucial to ensure continuity, notably during the foreseen transition phase in 2021. I am confident that the future deployment manager will build on the expertise and the know-how that the SESAR Deployment Alliance has achieved over the past 6 years. Before I close my remarks, I would like to say thank you to Nicolas and his team for organizing this event. Thank you also to all the panelists for the open and fruitful discussion. Exchanging our views and reflecting together on the future is an important part, especially in times where we can't meet in person. To conclude, let me say that I'm really looking forward to the challenges ahead of us. I am convinced that, like in the past, together we will tackle them successfully. Thank you, stay safe, and all the best for the future.
We thank you, Mr. Beckers, for the appreciative words towards the SDM activity in the past 6 years, and we noted the need to ensure continuity of the SDM function through an enhanced and strengthened cooperation between the industry and the institutions involved. We have now reached the very end of the interesting morning session of our annual event, organized under the theme of continuing the journey of ATM modernization. And as I mentioned in my opening, it is now time to visualize the results of the polls we have asked you to vote on until now. Many thanks for your votes, and as you will see displayed on your screen, on the first poll, the first results are of the overwhelming opinion that SDM had significantly delivered since its inception. Also, on the second poll that will be displayed on your screen, the wide opinion expressed is that despite the impact this crisis is having, you are still committed to continue ATM modernization. And on our last poll this morning, and probably most important, is that you have voted and considered enhancing and strengthening the cooperation between all stakeholders as being key for successfully continuing the journey of ATM modernization. We thank you for your ongoing support, and we remain committed to continue delivering together. And now it's time for the lunch break, and we invite the implementing partner to stay connected for the afternoon working level session. Since we prepared a small energizing surprise for you, we'd like you to invite to be back with us at 13:45, just before the afternoon session. Enjoy your lunch, and thank you all for your participation. Thank you.